Alright, so we got some breaking news here. Turns out a former roadie for Gorillaz has published an expose on touring with the band and all the various hijinks and miscellaneous bullshit that they went through. The name of the guy is...
Name and address withheld.
But they call him Hamish Trombone. This dude is clearly English as fuck, but... Hamish's story came straight from Gorillaz 2020 Almanac, which is not an almanac, but like a collection of really cool, different kind of writing forms and art styles and junk like that. It's pretty dope, honestly. I recommend picking it up if you can. People say to me, Hamish, you're a jammy wee bastard. Life on the road, hanging up with rock stars, going to concerts every night. You're living the dream, man. And all that with an O level in woodwork and a checkered criminal record. Hey, back in the early days, that's exactly what I thought too. Must be nearly 20 years ago I went on my first tour. I was younger then, still had a bit of hair and at least 3 more teeth. So I was up for the crack. But even for a scrapper like me, it was a baptism of fire. Literally, that was one of Murdoch's initiation tests. I was no stranger to chaos and carnage, but Gorillaz dialed it up to the 11. I won't lie though, we had some great times. The bits I can remember, got the scars to prove it. But nearly 2 decades of touring with Gorillaz took its toll. I don't mind the squalor so much. I've got 7 kids and an incontinent pit bull. It's not even the workplace injuries or gunshot wounds, it's the mental trauma. Those scars never heal. See, most bands go hell for leather when they start out, destroying hotel rooms and kidnapping elephants, etc. Then they grow up a bit, you know? Pal of mine, roadie for Rage Against the Machine, says nowadays that lot are tucked into bed by 7 p.m. Coco's all around. But with Gorillaz, it's the opposite. Every tour is more chaotic than before. The last one I did in the US a few years back was the final straw that broke this old camel's back. Bit of scene setting first. We've each got our own bunks on the bus, crew and the band, except Murdoch, who designed himself a wee den at the back. Velvet drapes, piranha tank, sandwich toaster, fold-out Ouija board, an artiste suite he called it. We all called it the captain's cabin, especially after a few days when it started to hum like a fishing trawler, the monkey arts clown. Oh, and Murdoch blew most of the tour budget upgrading that room, so we were forced to use the cheapest bus company on the market. That thing was a death trap on wheels. Suspension was shot, brakes non-existent, not to mention the suspected human remains in the luggage hold. What the fuck? One night, bouncing along a desert highway, the TV, not a snazzy flat screen, but an old boxy job the size of a filing cabinet, slid out of its bracket and smashed into 2D's head. That dude has a lot of brain damage. Luckily, the wee lad can take a knock. I once saw him get run over by a monster truck. Anyway, minutes later, a clock fell off the wall and cracked him again. It was spooky, like the bus had it in for us, you know? On the back of the clock, someone had written, "This bus is shite," in blood. One of the crew swore it was Peter Hook's handwriting. Isn't that the guy from Joy Division or something? Yeah. My theory is Hook cursed that bus years ago when he was touring, cause it brought us nothing but disaster from the onset. Exploding tires, breakdowns, mental and mechanical, vanishing luggage, pestilence. I remember this one night, we found a toad in the bus toilet. Huge bastard it was, sat on the throne like Jabba the Hutt. We were about to chuck it off when someone noticed Russell wasn't on his bunk. He wasn't anywhere on board. Crazy theories started going about, fueled by lack of sleep and Murdoch's bathtub gin. Did I think Russ got turned into a toad? No, I'm not a loony, or off my nut or whiz like the driver. Murdoch, on the other hand, swore it was black magic. It was either the cursed bus or a witch doctor he fleeced back in New Orleans. But fear not, he said. He knew a spell to get Russ back, one he learned off some shaman in Mexico. So he lugged the toad into his cabin and locked the door. We heard some chanting, a glockenspiel, and then what sounded like a water balloon bursting. Noodle kicked the door in at that point, but the toad was nowhere to be found. Poor Tootie. Laddie was inconsolable. He thought Russ was gone for good. A few minutes later, the tour manager gets a call from the police at the Canada-US border. They found Russ asleep in the toilet at customs. He must have nipped out for a wee jobby while we were having our passports checked. I wish I could say that was as bad as it got. A few days later, the bus took a wrong turn. We don't call him wrong way, wrong. Okay, let's go again. A few days later, the driver took a wrong turn. We don't call him wrong. A few days later, the driver took a wrong turn. We don't call him wrong way, run for nothing. And we ended up at some roadside biker bar, all buzzing neon and bullet holes. Coyote's Coffin it was called. Not the kind of place you bring your ma, but we needed directions. 2D drew the short straw. There was only one straw, to be fair, so in he went. Anyway, a few minutes later, all hell breaks loose. Guns going off, glass smashing. Then 2D legs it back out to the bus, and we roar out of there, an angry mob in our wake. So now we're being chased through the desert by a cutthroat biker gang. After a few miles, the bikers overtake us and we skid to a halt on the highway, surrounded. Guns pointed at us a lot. Terrifying it was, and I grew up in Glasgow. Luckily, the tour manager had a plan for just this kind of situation. She opened the door and sent Noodle out to negotiate. I closed the curtains. 2D made a pot of tea. Murdoch locked himself into the flight case. We turned the telly up really loud. Jeopardy, I think it was. Russ aced all the questions. Smartest drummer I've ever known. Anyway, half an hour later, Noodle let herself in, put on her slippers and said, "Good night, sweet as you like." Ron fired up the bus and off we went. Then Murdoch skulks out, says not to worry, everything's sorted. He's given Coyote Coffin 1 star on TripAdvisor. A few days later, after the last show, we went out to celebrate, got totally blootered. What the fuck? What? I've never seen that word before. And somehow wound up at a mafia mansion in the hills. Bit of a mix-up on Yelp. We were looking for Papa John's. Luckily for us, the mob boss was a fan. We bargained our freedom for an unplugged playthrough of Demon Days and a box of t-shirts. When we finally got back outside, the bus was a raging inferno, flames turning the sky red. Funny thing is, what finally did the bus in wasn't biker gangs or mobsters, but Murdoch's sandwich toaster. It must have set the velvet drapes alight. Everyone's on their phones getting taxis when this weird growl came out from under the burning bus. I crept closer to have a look, and that monster toad hopped straight into my arms. Really touching moment. Then the bus exploded, and I woke up 2 months later in hospital. Managed to wangle early retirement after that. And when I look back on my years with Gorillaz, even though a lot of it was absolutely harrowing, we did have some great times. Writing this even brought a few tears to my eyes. At least it would have if my tear ducts weren't destroyed in the explosion. But hey, there were ups and downs, but at the end of the day, I survived. Which is more than I can say for Ron and Hannah, or Phil, who is still missing. Thanks for reading, and Gorillaz, thanks for the memories. And thanks to you, Hamish, for sharing this really terrifying foray into the life of a roadie of an animated band. And thank you for watching.